I am so happy to interview Lisa Louie today. Her article titled Lessons Learned as a Caregiver was recently published by Authority magazine. Lisa, you used the words seismic shift to describe what you went through when you realized your son needed you to redefine what it meant to be a parent. Would you mind telling us about that process?
Yes. Well, just you saying that hits me with a bolt of emotion because for any of us parents, um, I think we start out hopefully that we'll have a normally developing child who's going to be healthy, and that our job is to guide them to young adulthood and have them be able to be a basic functioning person, and that is our most basic level job as a parent. And for those of us who discover that our child has significant developmental disabilities or physical disabilities or any of a range of things that can happen with a child, when we realize that this is going to be a long-term, really big challenge, it's a shock to the system. None of us are really prepared to be a quote unquote normal parent of normal children. That is in and of itself a huge challenge that I have a typically developing son who's grown up now. That's hard enough. But so we're already challenged with that. And then it's like dropping off the edge of a cliff when you find out that your child has challenges so big that the the wider world doesn't really have answers or guidance for you. And also it's a sort of a grief situation because I think parents with special needs children, and some people like that term and some people don't, but for lack of a better word, kids who have extraordinary challenges, there is a sort of a grief stage that parents also go through. That's a part of that seismic shift I mentioned, is that you realize your child may never reach those goals that you had very basic level dreams for. And so as a parent, it just knocks you off your feet, and trying to find solid ground to walk on for yourself and then to help your child is really a big challenge.
The word normal is just completely tossed out of the equation. What
Right.
might have helped you make that transition easier at the time?
At that time, my son was diagnosed with autism in 2000. And so he was born in 1997, and things have been changing at a rapid pace since that time. But at that time, there really wasn't much internet information. The internet itself was fairly new. We didn't have all the easy access to information. And frankly, even if we did have quote unquote easy access to information, when you're in a house with this challenge, it doesn't make it that much easier. Um, so I think just what I said there is a reflection of one of the key things that I think happens with families. That seismic shift in our realization of what our reality is makes us feel isolated. I have yet to meet a family who has a child with special challenges who has not felt, at least some of the time, very isolated from other people. And I think the strength that I've found and the ability that we found to make our son's life better has been when we did reach out and connect with other people, whether it was therapists or teachers. Of course, we had those people in our lives, but also with other families and other organizations that may be providing support and making you feel that just because you're not normal doesn't mean that you're alone. And so breaking away from the isolation state that so many of us get into, if we had done that earlier, I think that might have helped us.
Anything outside the norm is isolating, isn't it?
Yes.
You mentioned that possibly an earlier intervention might have helped your son's language abilities develop better. What was your what was your experience that you hope to change for other parents now?
These days we're seeing awareness and testing for children as young as a year or a year and a half old to see if they have some small signs that they may have some issues, because autism is really a neurological and physical there's a wide range of things that go into an autism diagnosis. And there are some very specific things that you could do to help. It's not going to fix or solve the problem instantly, but I do think that when children have an earlier exposure to repeated speech therapy type of things, that can help kids start a little bit earlier. So I think, we were playing the game that many parents even today do, which is even our pediatricians say, oh, just wait and see. He's just going to start talking when he's 3. Well,
Yeah.
we didn't get him assessed till he was 3.5. He didn't really start getting services till he was 4, but we were following what our pediatrician said as well. Because our son looked like a bright little boy. He just wasn't speaking and he had some quirky behaviors. But I think now there is value in these earlier testing modes where even if it may not pan out that the child was on the spectrum, it's not going to hurt them to have a little speech therapy or some support like that, just to kind of get things rolling earlier. It gets them ahead of the game a little.
As you said, we define a good parent as a parent who helps a child achieve all the skills that are necessary to be a functioning adult. But how do you define being a good parent now to a child that has very special needs?
Yeah, so that is huge. Um, I wrote myself a note before our talk today that if you are a caregiver in a long-term ongoing caregiving situation, it's an evolutionary process. I've
Yeah.
also seen elderly parents go have difficulties and have lost both my parents in recent times. But that's a short-lived thing compared to a child's entire life. So now my younger son, the one who's fairly severely autistic, is in his late 20s. And we don't see an end to this. He makes progress and we still work hard to give him opportunities to learn and grow. But I think the difference for parents with children in any kind of special education or developmental disability situation, there's a big drop off point that is actually helpful for parents in a way when children age out of the school system and across the country it depends on the state, but up until age 21 or 22 there are still some daily supports built into the law for our kids are still considered school age until they hit in California it's 22. So there was always a program. I felt like someone else was helping my son do something. We were all working together towards something, and then you suddenly have a young adult at home with no program. And
No
if you're not, it's just you dropping off a cliff. It's a very scary time for parents.
service.
We were fortunate that we didn't have to wait too long on a waiting list to find a day program for my son. So we were very lucky for that because we know I now meet families with children, adult autistic adult children who are in their 30s and 40s who for years have had no other support than the parents. And so they're at home watching TV or so what we realized was we're lucky to have the day program that he has, but when he's home with us, we want that to be a happy, positive time. And on weekends, we go hiking it doesn't matter rain or shine. If he's not at his program, we are out on a trail someplace or adventuring somewhere where he's out in the world and engaging in the world, which used to be difficult for him. And so for me now, if I can keep him, he has a lot of health issues with if he eats foods that he has food allergies with, things go downhill with that. So it's like if we can keep him healthy and keep him engaged and make sure he's in an environment where he feels loved, we
Mhm.
have given him a good day and a good week and a good year and hopefully what feels like a good life. And having him smile and be happy and healthy is a gratifying feeling for me now that I would have just still been, oh, we still have to fix him. We still have to help him become normal. And that's just not in the picture.
Yes.
Still helping him progress, yes, but hoping that he'll someday suddenly be normal, that's not what we look to. So, what makes him healthy and happy? Um, with us so that we're also enjoying our life with him is a big, big change in mentality.
It sounds like a huge change in mentality for those of us who quote unquote had normally developing children. It's like we couldn't wait for them to get out of the toddler stage or get through the teenage years. But you are still engaged with this adult child that needs some kind of support and attention from you, even in his late 20s.
And to that's such a great point. And you mentioned, oh, we can't wait till we're out of the toddler stage because then we won't have to do that 24/7 watching. Um, our son is in his late 20s, but he still has some of that need to watch 24/7 just for some safety issues. And the other thing that I always refer to as the monster under the bed for parents of children with extraordinary challenges. The monster under the bed for us is worrying what will happen when we're not here. It's
Yes,
just absolute torture every day. So, what might shock other people, because I'm a fun-loving person who likes to go out in the world, I like to go out to eat, I like to travel. I used to be a world traveler, but in these last 20 some years, my husband and I do not go out for dinner or lunch together. The two of us do not go in a car, just the two of us someplace. If our son's with us, of course we go do things. When we were family four with, I have another son. But now, there's never been a time when just my husband and I go out, because if we get in a car crash at the same time, there is no one who could handle our son's issues. So it's hard for people to imagine that reality, but that is our reality. And then we're people who like to go out and do things, but we take turns. So we take turns doing things with friends, or we invite friends to our house for social activity, but we do not drive in the car to go to dinner someplace, because if there was a car crash, that would be, life over for our son. So people don't know the depth at which this affects a person's life.
it's like the sword of Damocles hanging over your head all the time.
Yes.
I'm wondering, I've been a marriage coach for 30 years, so I'm wondering what effort has it taken for you and your husband to maintain a fairly healthy marriage relationship with this kind of stress?
It is so stressful. And, we laugh about it. Our joke is that there was a Johnny Carson interview with Paul Newman years and years ago. And he asked Paul Newman, he goes, well, you and Joanne Woodward have been married for decades. What's your secret? You're like the only couple that's still together. What's your secret? And Paul Newman said, we didn't split up. Which is a very simple thing. And that's our joke, because we can't. We really can't. We have a team project. So we like each other's company. We don't have time to go off and have a nice trip together. We don't have the opportunity to go have a nice dinner together. So we have to have smaller ways to just enjoy a conversation, or get some takeout food that we like, or go as a family to enjoy something, which is never relaxing, because with an autistic person, it's not relaxing to go to a restaurant. But we try to do those things. But I've heard other couples that don't have the challenge of special needs kid who got into their later years and they said, geez, we just were drifting apart. But they came up with a joint project and that drew them back together. Well, our son is our joint project, and we have to be a team and work well together to do that. And you have to do that with a good, positive spirit.
You are so fortunate, but both you and your husband were willing to make this your joint project and to sacrifice the things you have sacrificed in order to do the best you can for your son. What was your personality like before this huge change in
Oh,
direction?
gosh, I was bubbly, effervescent, can't stop talking, go out and conquer the world person. I was a world traveler. I'd lived abroad, always the one voted most likely to be whatever. I was a big go-getter out in the world, doing 5 million things at once. And now, to get through a day, is such a challenge just to make sure that we keep stability and, just I always joke that I've got, two or three full-time jobs working to pay the bills, which I never foresee that ending because there are extra expenses and it is also financially devastating during the years you're raising your child because most of us, even if we weren't wealthy, so a middle class family like ours was probably spending tens of thousands of dollars. We were spending the equivalent of a private school tuition every year since our son was 4, all those years. So that's money that we didn't put into our retirement plan. Um, and so there's financial stress with it, but now I've tracked off the question, but okay, you have to tee me back because I went off.
Well, I was asking what you were like before, and then I was
And
about to.
it's going, so see, this is what happens when you so I still have to be a very active, dynamic person to handle all of our finances, but having a special needs, even adult child is a full-time job. And then as we parents get older, we've had stresses and things in our lives, and that long-term relentless stress can cause health problems for us or just getting into your 60s or whatever. So we both have to be more careful of our health now because we need to be here for him, but it's just a natural part of, oh, we need to spend a little more time checking in with doctors or taking care of our own health. So my overachiever self of the past has to focus all those energies into a much narrower range of things. So it cuts away things that I wish that I was doing, which would be more creative projects, writing books. Um, those are things that are harder for me to do.
I'm wondering, I'm curious, Lisa, to find out how have you managed the emotional shift from this big life down to a very narrow life? Have there been processes where you've had to work through resentment or
Yes.
feeling like a victim or how have you done that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so stressful. Um, there was a study done at UCSF here in San Francisco, and the study was to see if relentless chronic stress actually physically affected our telomeres, which is a component of our DNA. And it's related to our life, how long our life may be. It can affect that. And they were looking for subjects who were the worst example of absolute high level, relentless, chronic stress that never stopped. And who did they choose? They chose mothers of autistic children.
Gosh, how
And
obvious.
it was an honor and a privilege. I think that was a turning point for me to see that there was a study that was acknowledging this stress, made me and the other women, of course, we didn't meet each other till the end because we weren't, you know, you weren't meeting the other subjects, but to be sort of a lab rat for this very serious study about stress and have it acknowledging that this was the level that it is was helpful to me because I realized that it was acknowledged by someone that
Yes,
this is that stressful. And when it was acknowledged so officially by someone else, it made me look for more hands-on tools and things that I could use. Because I think many of us, and this goes for your other caregiver interviewees, we pretend that we're going to be okay and we're just going to get through it. But when somebody does a study, it's like, no, this is a really serious, heavy duty, difficult thing. I need to find tools. And so I did find some exercise. Here was a big one for us is that we couldn't get our son out of the house, and I was always an outdoorsy person. And we just became very determined that one of the tools we were going to use to help our son, which helped me, was to get him out hiking. And over the years, that became our big thing. And it dumped me into this situation where I created a website called hikingautism.com, which isn't all about hiking and it isn't all about autism. What it really is every week is a place for me to share feelings about how to deal with life challenges and stress. And
Mhm.
so for me to write about it and share the tools I've learned with other people, to sometimes that it's just saying out loud that you're in a stressful situation, sharing that and saying out loud and that it's okay to say you're stressed was probably the biggest thing that helped me.
I love that. And I love that it was hiking, because you're getting some physical exercise, some outlet for all the stressful feelings, as well as you provided an outlet for your son that previously he couldn't handle.
Mhm.
We humans love predictability and the illusion that we have things under control. So, hiking, I assume, is one of the ways you've managed the unpredictability of life. What are some other methods that you use to take care of yourself?
I did at some once we got our son a little bit in a better place when we started the hiking and getting him out every week doing that, which was several years ago. Then and this is an issue for women, I think. I know this may happen to men, but I really see this in women a lot. Um, I decided that I deserved to go out once or twice a week for a fitness class.
Okay.
And I found a place 5-minute walk from my house. I didn't have to take a lot of time away from the house. So time is a tough commodity for me to lose because my son requires the 24/7 care. We have to juggle work and everything else. But I kind of stomped my foot. So that for me, the anger and resentment that you mentioned, that's definitely there. And it's hard to overcome it yourself as a person who feels you have to take care of everyone. So I sort of learned to stomp my foot and say, I'm going to go do this thing for myself.
Yes.
And I went once or twice a week to a fitness place for an hour at a time. And I felt better physically, I felt better mentally, and I made friends outside of the house who had nothing to do with autism. They
Yes.
were just friends at the fitness place, and having another community where I could step outside of my daily stress was a real game changer for me.
I'm prompted to share a similar story. I was widowed very young. I'd only been married 4.5 years. We had two baby boys. My
Oh
husband
my goodness.
dropped dead playing softball
Oh
from
my
an
gosh.
aortic aneurysm we didn't know he had. I felt like such an oddball. I was this 24-year-old
Oh my gosh.
attractive single mom. I didn't know anyone in my circle that could relate to me.
Right, right.
I just felt odd. And
Yeah.
so I enrolled in an evening class to learn oral reading techniques. No
Oh,
one there knew my circumstances. It was such a relief to be in an environment where I wasn't that young widow
right.
with
Gosh.
that label.
Right, right. I always that because what moving and tragic and difficult story, but it's a tribute to you being who you are and brought up your kids and lived through all that. But I often said, I'm trying to think of the word, not um there's a word, I'm trying to think of the word that just like people see our family and think, oh, here's oh, look at them. Look at that life they have. Aren't those parents something? And I just get tired of being the, oh, look at those special needs parents with their son. It's so heartwarming that people acknowledge it, but it's like, oh, there's the widow with her two little kids, and then you're othered. And because it's so big, they can't relate. And the other thing that what you just shared reminds me of that people talk about this is people say, "Oh, we're only given the challenges that we're able to handle." And it's like, sorry, it doesn't work that way. There is not a special needs parent in the world who said, "Oh yeah, I got this. I've just got this all handled." No, we're thrown into a very surprising, difficult situation. And gosh, look at you and look at you. Here you are today helping people through your work, sharing articles like this.
Well, for about 5 years, it was all I could do to just change another diaper, scramble another egg, put one foot in front of the other. It took about 5 years for me to begin to think that life could be good again.
Yeah.
It was so devastating. And, you mentioned the years it took to
Oh,
accept the reality of your son's condition and to begin to develop some ways to keep yourself balanced. So,
so what you just said, you keep triggering things that remind me of how we've dealt with things. You said, it took you those 5 years of just change the next diaper, get through that next day. And my little catchphrase I use at the end of not every, but most of my weekly blog posts on my website is keep putting one foot forward because as you say, your view of your world broadens when things are going well, and then it shrinks down when things are tough again. And we've all been through that, a loved one dropping dead, losing a parent or a husband or a devastating diagnosis, whatever that may be. All these things that can happen, somebody losing a job, all those, a pet. Any of these things can be absolutely devastating. And it's literally that thing people describe of can you wake up in the morning and put your first foot on the floor and follow it with that second floor and stand up and move yourself through that day. And we learn that you can change the next diaper because you have to. And
yes,
I can get up and fight through the day and get my son to school, even when he was fighting us tooth and nail because he was overwhelmed. You find a way to get through those step by step. And then when things go well, you can broaden your horizons. But when things blow up again, you can always shift back to that. I will get through this next 10 minutes. I'll
yes.
get through this next hour. And we have to do that up and down through life, I think. But if we can embrace it, it helps.
Well, I doubt that any human being gets through a lifetime without having devastating news or circumstances change
Right.
that you didn't plan on and didn't want. I was about to ask if you have prayers or mantras that you use to manage your worry about your son's future. And maybe it's what you just said, to put one foot forward.
Yeah, keep putting one foot forward is the phrase I use for myself. And part of it is for us parents in this situation, we have this scary thought of something happening to us with no plans put in place and who's going to love our child. And the next scary level thought is we have plans in place and we know what that future is, and it's still scary and depressing for us because we worry that no one will be loving our family member and caring for them the way we do. It's a very, very scary future to look at, even in the best of circumstances. So we all have to work towards how we could create that for the time when we're not here. But you can't look at it too straight on in some ways. You do have to say, hey, here's our day today. We're having a good day. And he went to bed knowing he was loved. And I need to be able to go to bed each night knowing that I got through that component of my life in a good way.
I think all of us are really good fiction writers, and it's really a discipline to rein our imaginations in and come back to the present moment. Am I okay
Right,
today?
right, 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 right.
Did I manage today? But when we start imagining the future, it's usually in the worst possible terms that only add stress that is not manageable. We can manage today, but we can't manage an unknown future. You mentioned in your article the story of the young teaching assistant that helped you achieve your goal of going hiking. I want to hear more about the hiking part of your process.
Well, I grew up in upstate New York in the middle of nowhere, and my life as a kid was running around the backfields and forests in the Mohawk Valley. It was a very snowy place. We had hot, humid summers and really cold, long winters. And being outdoors was what we did. That's what there was to do, and that was a wonderful way to grow up. And it was a joy for me. And being outside in nature, because even we country kids have stresses and anxieties in our life, and being outdoors was always the stabilizing force for me. And I'd lost some of that here. I mean, when our boys were younger, we did take them out on walks and hikes, but when you've got a kid you can still put in a backpack, that's one thing, or push in a stroller on a nice sort of smooth path, that's one thing. But when they are having some sort of a push against you situation, when they get bigger and stronger, it got where we couldn't take our son out easily to places like that. So we had gone through enough of it where finally we were trapped. And we had met this wonderful young teacher who we just felt like we just called him the autism whisperer, and he had been an assistant for our son for a short time, and then he disappeared for like a year and a half from our lives. He moved to a different school, and all the time our lives got narrower and narrower and narrower. And my husband and I said, gosh, if only this guy were still around, we know that would make a difference. Well, lo and behold, he called us and said, I got my master's in special education. I wanted to thank you and your son because you helped us. You helped me get to this point. And I thought, oh my gosh, here's this young guy who is so gifted, and he's calling to thank us a year and a half or 2 years later. And we got up the nerve, now that we had his contact, we got up the nerve to ask him if he would work privately with us and our son to just try to break him out of his shell. And the hiking thing always comes down to me to this point where we had meetings and talked, and he just looked at me and he said, what is it? What activity do you want to do with your son? What do you want to do with your son? And I had to force the word out of my throat. It was all, my voice was cracking. I said, hiking. I want to take my son hiking. I just knew that would be such a helpful thing. And then we did that with that young man. And it took work, but
Yeah.
he had such a magic touch, and it changed all of our lives, just dramatically and very quickly. And I think you were talking about predictability, especially for a person on the autism spectrum. They like that routine and predictability. When you go hiking, there are some things that are not predictable, but being in nature is a consistent element. And so being outdoors with the sun and the wind and trees or water was a consistent enough thing that my son got used to going to a new place every week. And that was still routine enough for him to accept and enjoy.
Well, your result of the success of hiking with Sean has created a website to help other parents experiencing the healing of being in nature. What is that URL so that our viewers can find you?
It's very easy. It's all one word, no hyphen or space, hiking autism. You could just do lowercase, find hikingautism.com, and it'll take you to the home page. And I always suggest to people that they click on the insights heading is on the menu, is where it gives like weekly sort of like heartfelt insights to just lift people up. So it's always a bit of a heart lifting thing. But it also, I'm up to hike number 216. It's an actual hands-on hike information site for here in Northern California, the Bay Area for the most part, but for some other areas, there are hands-on hike instructions with beautiful photo galleries in every one. So people can use that if they're an armchair hiker, they can enjoy the photos at home, or they can use that as a hiking guide to go out someplace. And the nice thing about it is it turns out that our local autism society got wind of that, and they asked me to help guide other families on group hikes, which is not something I do with my website in and of itself, but that's just a general share for everyone, some nice free information. But I do enjoy every month taking other families out for hikes, and it's really inspiring to see.
My son lives in the Bay Area, and I'll tell him about the website because he loves hiking and
Oh,
you
that's great.
unearth some trails that he hasn't found. Lisa has posted over 2,000 photos and directions for hikes in the San Francisco area and has a community, as you mentioned, a community is developed around hikingautism.com. So, what's the best way for viewers to reach you? Is it through this website?
Yep. If they go to hikingautism.com, in the menu bar, there's a contact button, and then that leads you to be able to contact me.
It's such a pleasure to meet you and to further interview you. I recommend the viewers of this interview look at the written article that's published in Authority magazine by Lisa Louis, and Louis is spelled Louis. Thank you so much for the time you've given me this morning, Lisa.
Thank
I
you,
appreciate
Nancy.
it.
It was wonderful to speak with you. Thank you.